Hi everybody, Dave Rauch here, and I'm joined by Karen Conlon. Everybody knows Karen is the ex-president and CEO of CACM, California Association of Community Managers. But I think not everybody knows that Karen, before CACM, worked for a developer, Chappelle Industries?
Correct, S&S Construction.
Oh, that's what it was called?
S&S and Chappelle Homes, one and the same.
Awesome. So Karen comes from the real estate development background. And Karen, can you tell us how that helped you with being the president of CACM?
Absolutely. Well, not only did that help me at CACM, but also I started in the industry as a manager. I actually managed HOAs, a portfolio of HOAs, which really helped me on the developer side. So when I worked for the developer, my job was actually to create all of the new HOAs for S&S's subdivisions here in Southern California. And so having the management background and then working with the developer really gave me a very broad perspective of the HOA world and industry when I was hired by CACM as their first CEO.
And understanding the challenges of both industries is very helpful.
Very helpful, both on the management side as well as the developer side, because developers are part of the HOA world, an important part. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for the developer. But I also was on the board of directors of my own HOA a couple of times.
Wow.
And so that just gave me even a different perspective. But this has been just a great career path for me, almost 40 years now in the industry.
And I don't know if anybody's heard, but I heard this morning that we are now at 1.7 million homes a year. So we are building new communities and new homes like crazy, new homes, because there's such a paucity of existing housing stock.
Yeah, a low housing stock, but also we're running out of available land in California. So we're seeing both vertical as well as horizontal development, high-rise versus single-family homes. I think more single-family homes in the Northern California market, and perhaps out in the Inland Empire, desert area, some single-family homes. We're still seeing building of large master plan communities with a lot of amenities. So the developer side, I really enjoyed that work. It was very interesting. I would get to hire the management company, so I got to know a lot of the managers, saw a lot of everybody growing up in the industry, starting out as a manager, some of them going on to then own their own companies. So it's just been a great career path for me.
And I think the genesis for CACM was the effort by some to license community managers, correct?
That is correct.
So tell us a little bit about that, and also tell us a little bit about your biggest challenges when you were running CACM.
Happy to do so. Back in the late 80s, right around the time the Davis-Sterling Act was enacted, there was a large management company in Orange County, which is no longer here, thankfully, that ended up embezzling quite a bit of money from HOAs. And the California Association of Realtors said, hey, you guys, we're going to license you because you're doing the same thing as brokers do. You're managing money. Well, they introduced a bill, and that bill was eventually pulled because the industry came together and united and said, we shouldn't be licensed. That's not what we do. We don't do sales or the transaction side of real estate. We manage the corporation, the communities. And so that group of leaders in the industry convinced the legislature that that was not the way to go. So the bill got pulled, and that was the reason why CACM was created, was to stave off interference by the state of California in our industry. At CACM, those individuals who came together to stave off the bill were actually, I think, the original 9 founding manager members of CACM. So we determined that the best route to go is to self-regulate rather than have the government interfere in telling us how we can do our pricing and how we have to act, all of those things. And it's been working now for 30 years. CACM is turning 30 this year. So that was the reason CACM was created. We self-regulated by creating a certification program, a code of ethics, and a disciplinary process for any members who might step over the line. And over the years, there have been some that have done that, and they've been disciplined by CACM. So we were able to prove to the legislature that we can discipline our own, that we can police our own industry, and it's continued to work till today.
That's right, and actually I think that's where I met you. Was I worked for Nora Jaski back in the early 1990s, and she was also a big proponent of CACM.
She was.
And I think that's where I met you a long time ago.
Yes, that's correct. Nora was one of the founding members of CACM, and we miss her to this day.
Yes, we do. And of course, we're living now in the time of COVID, and you're not even living in California anymore. You're in Idaho.
Yes.
And so kind of looking back at your time at CACM and dealing with COVID, do you have any ideas or thoughts about dealing with this type of situation? I mean, I know we have meetings by Zoom, we have vendor meetings with Zoom, we have the pool areas shut down, so many changes. So what are your thoughts on all this stuff, all this new stuff?
Well, it's interesting. And I realize I didn't answer your question beforehand on some of the challenges I saw while at CACM. The initial challenges were just policing our own industry to keep the legislature, because they kept trying several times after the original time frame to keep coming back and licensing us, and we've been able to sort of hold off the realtors and convince the legislature that wasn't the route to go. Because of the proliferation of HOAs in the industry, and unfortunately there's some groups out there that don't really like HOAs, so they've misrepresented a lot of what goes on in the HOA to the legislature, and we've had to continue to fight that. So that's ongoing. With regards to the COVID activity, it's really, really interesting. Our meetings now are by Zoom or perhaps through other means of telecommunication, which are wonderful. And managers that I've been speaking to these past few years since I retired from CACM love the Zoom meetings. They think it's fantastic, and frankly, so do the board members. And frankly, board members are telling me that they're seeing more participation from their homeowners at the board meeting, because it can be done via their telephone or via Zoom. And so there's just much more easy access. So I think we're going to continue to see these types of meetings, maybe not so many in-person meetings anymore. As far as the other areas, shutting down pools, the normal things, those things happened when we were in a pre-COVID society for other reasons. So even though we've had to make a lot of adjustments, especially with managers either working in the office, not working in the office, or maybe part-time, both at home, part-time in the office, we'll still have to see how that plays out, because the lessening of the COVID requirements are easing up a little bit in California. So
finally,
much more than that, I don't think you're going to see too many more changes. The problems in the HOA world stay the same.
But
people, pets, parking, property, they all stay the same.
But I do think the meetings have become more productive on Zoom.
I would agree. Much more efficient, not as long as they are, and as in-person meetings. And the cool thing about Zoom is if you have a homeowner who's being disruptive, you can punch a button and mute them, and they can still participate in the meeting. You just don't have to listen to them.
That's right. Well, it should be interesting to see how the meetings evolve.
It will,
Zoom,
and I just think it will continue to be more efficient to do it this way.
And so what do you think, do you have any other thoughts on the future of the industry? Now that you've been out of it and you have some perspective on, especially California, let's say, do you have any thoughts on the future of the industry? Like, do you think roll-ups will continue?
In 2009, let me back up. In 2014, I retired as the CEO of CACM, and I opened a consulting company, Sequoia Grove Consulting. And since then, I've just been taking on special projects for HOAs. I've been doing management audits. I've been doing executive search for high-rises as well as large-scale communities, and also some expert witness work. And I think that having sort of stepped back full-time from the industry, it's been really interesting just to sort of watch it. And then in 2019, I relocated my office and my home to Idaho, but most of my clients are still here in California. So I go back and forth a lot, although not so much in the last year. But I think, we're going to continue to see some absorption of smaller management companies, but I'm seeing that slow down a lot. I'm not seeing it as aggressive as it was maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago. And then I think, too, we're seeing a lot of new people come into the industry. I'm doing a lot of online teaching for CACM, which I truly enjoy so much. Love meeting the new managers. So a lot of new blood coming into the industry. People are seeing it as a career path. I think that will continue to evolve even more, especially with different markets that are maybe not surviving the COVID issue. We're going to see, I think, a lot more entree into the industry. And there's just so much more opportunity than there was when I started in the industry.
And I think, too, that with lack of buildable land, that I think we're going to see a lot more attached, a lot more high-rise and mid-rise being built, infill in various cities. So that's another trend I think we're going to see.
I agree. The vertical building versus the the horizontal building. And we're still seeing high rises in some of the larger metropolitan areas being built. Obviously, they don't need as much space because they're going up. So yeah, it's just going to be interesting to watch, and so many more opportunities in areas of specialization now. And that's why CACM created not only the initial certification program, but also the specialty certificate programs for those areas of specialization, such as high-rise, portfolio, active adult communities, large-scale management. I think those are going to continue to evolve into different career paths, and then subsets of careers within those different areas.
It's exciting.
It is. It's very exciting.
So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts
My
on the
pleasure.
industry with us today. And thank you, everybody. Stay safe.